let's talk about what I read last week. I've actually been really productive with reading. I started doing some lab work this last week. So I was listening while I was in the lab to some pretty good books. So I've actually read, let me look real quick. I've read 5 books so far in the last week, which is way better than I was doing in previous weeks before that. Something just kind of clicked this week and we were like rolling. And so I thought, we'll do my weekly, let's sit down and talk about it. And we'll maybe get into some other things that I've been doing. We'll see. We'll find out. So, I do these every week. If you're interested in seeing more of my wrap-ups, hit that subscribe button, and I do these once a week, a weekly wrap-up of what I've been reading and what I am currently reading. And then on the weekends, I try to give you something a little bit different, either a review or a quick chat about something. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button. Let's go. Okay, so the first thing I read was Tumbling Down, which is the 5th book in the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. I followed that up immediately the next day with Across the Green Grass Fields, which is the 6th book of the Wayward Children series. If you want to see a longer review, I did that here. It was posted on Friday. You can take a look at it and listen to a longer breakdown of these things. But I will say, in brief, I really enjoyed these. They were both very good, and I had a good time listening to them. Tumbling Down is a continuation of the Jack and Jill story. So if you're familiar with the Wayward Children series, children go through portal doors, and when they come back, they need a place to land so that they can get either readjusted or come to terms with the fact that they're not probably going to go back. And that's when they fall into Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, and we get to follow their adventures. Jack and Jill are 2 of the children introduced in the first book. They are like 17-ish years old or something like that, 17 or almost 18. They're very close to like being adults. All of the children in this book are actually teenagers, older teenagers. So anyway, Jack and Jill are twin girls who went through a portal into the moors. We get introduced to them in the first book. In the second book, we get their backstory of what happened before they came into Eleanor's home. And then in this book, we get a continuation of their story. It was really good. It was actually set in the moors. And we got to revisit some of the characters from the first book, as well as some of the characters from the third book, and have a little adventure with some drowned gods and some vampires, and it was a fun little adventure with a little skeleton horse. I enjoyed getting to see Christopher again, who's one of my characters I really enjoy from the first and the third book. So Across the Green Grass Fields is book 6. This one is actually a standalone in the series, so you could read this one without having read any of the others. It will not spoil you for anything, at least yet, up until book 6. I don't know if this character is going to come back in the later series, but it won't spoil you for anything for the first 5 books. This is the horse girl book, so I have some opinions on this one. There was a line used that said high stepping like a quarter horse doing dressage, and I was like, quarter horses are known for not like high stepping, so little nitpicks. It just kind of made me laugh, but overall, I actually kind of liked this one. I thought it was just silly enough, and it had a lot of good thoughts about identity and how you justify your place in the world that I kind of enjoyed. So I do, again, have longer thoughts on both those. If you'd like to go watch that video, it is up. The next thing I finished, so I finished a nonfiction. I've been off my nonfiction game for the last couple months, just overwhelmed with life, and I finally come back to it. I had a holdout on this book called Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution by Cat Bohannon. And I saw it at a big box store, and I don't buy books from like Walmart. I don't go to Target anymore, and I probably saw it at Walmart or maybe Fred Meyer even. So I always will look those up on Storygraph, see how the reviews look, and then I will put a hold on them on Libby if I can find them. And so that's what I did. I put a hold on Libby. The hold came through. I think I was on hold for this for like 3 months. It was really, really fascinating. I cannot remember what Cat Bohannon's specific research is in, but she is an evolutionary biologist. That is also what I am, but this focuses more on human evolution, which is an area I'm not super familiar with, but I was familiar with a lot of the sources that she was pulling information from for other mammalian species. So really fascinating. It's broken into chapters on different things. We had a chapter on, started off with milk, and I learned way more about breast milk than I ever thought I would want to know, coming up from like marsupials and monotremes and into mammals and primates eventually, and then into humans and all of that evolutionary history. And then we went into the womb, and we went into limbs and ears and eyes and voice, and we went into the last chapter had to do with like love and like connection and stuff like that. What makes us human, right? What differentiates us from apes, or what we believe differentiates us from apes. This was actually really fascinating. A lot of information on where the new research indicates that we are in terms of where our human traits came from, which has changed a lot since when I was in my lower level biology classes in like 2012 or so. This type of information tends to change every 10 to 15 years. We get new information because of new findings, new research comes out, new anthropological evidence. And I thought she wove this together in a way that was so interesting in terms of her narration style. It was also narrated by the author. So I ordered this book physically so that I can go back through it, because I do want to talk about it, but I need to like have it in front of me to talk about it, because there's some things I want to mark. I will probably be rereading this, at least rereading sections of it, because I thought it was so informative. And her style is so like clever and witty, and she does relate some of the research to anecdotal evidence from herself or from her friends, people that she knows, and that makes it feel kind of personal. And it reminds me a lot of sitting in some of the lectures from the professors that I really, really liked during my education. And that can really make you retain the information so much better when you get given it in a way that you can identify with, and a way that you can like enjoy listening to. So I loved this. I think it was so well done and so smart. And it was absolutely fascinating. Some definitely squirmy moments where we were talking about like the evolution of gynecology, the evolution of midwifery, that type of stuff. And it is kind of, some of it is like extrapolated into a little story that she presents based off of some stuff that she's read from anthropological and archaeological evidence. So some stuff is kind of like, here's a little story set in this time zone. She does do a really good job, I think, of being inclusive in here. I'm not going to say 100% is like the best, but she does do a really good job of framing things in terms of what affects us on a assigned female at birth perspective, and also what affects us at a, this is how we were socialized. If we were socialized female, this is how that affects us. And also, if we currently identify as female, that is how that affects us. And so being inclusive with those types of things, trying to include non-binary people, like where it would be like scientifically valid to include them, and highlighting the parts where non-binary people and people outside of the gender binary are missing from data, and whether and how that affects different things, especially clinical trials and medication that can affect you in different ways based on hormone levels and all sorts of different things. And so we talked about intersex people as well, and how the data is missing there in a lot of places, not only because of the rarity, but the observed rarity, but also because of the lack of interest in pursuing clinical stuff in anything that is not male dominated for the majority of the United States history. So also very centered in the United States, but does take some information from outside, from a global perspective, into account as well, but not focused on much outside of the United States. So I think pretty good job. Like when I said we were talking about gynecology and some of the things that made me squirm, we definitely talked a lot about forced things that happened that I'm not going to get into in the history of gynecology that you can look up. That's pretty horrifying. Anyway, absolutely fascinating. If you have any interest in that type of topic at all, I was enthralled. I finished this very quickly. I enjoyed listening to it like a lot. Then my book last week, for a while, I was just like winding down to bed and listening to 10 or 15 minutes at a time. I debated whether I was going to talk about this one or not, and decided I might as well talk about it. I listened to the Call of Cthulhu, and I did not enjoy it. at all. I could not get past the racism of the book. I couldn't get past the way the language was used. And I know that I'm one to say that like language evolves over time, and sometimes classic books and historical things will have a specific type of language used, and you have to kind of like go, okay, that was the language of the time. We've advanced past that. This one felt like it went out of the way to be even worse than most classics. Like, this was, I guess, published in 1928, according to the data I have on the screen. And it felt like it was egregious for that time, even for compared to the stuff that I've read. Just the terms used for people who were non-white, and just the way that they were spoken about. And you could really feel, knowing the little bit that I know about HP Lovecraft, you could feel the fear of people who were not like the narrator in this book. Like, it was like not just a fear of Cthulhu. Cthulhu was not the overwhelming, like, scary presence in here, really. The overwhelming scary presence was the cultists of Cthulhu, who were very much described by racial stereotypes and their races, and like the languages they used and all this type of stuff. That was the scary part to the narrator, and I couldn't really get past that to find this to actually be a compelling story in any way, because sometimes you can strip that away and go, okay, are there the bones here of a good story? And if someone were to rewrite this, like, for example, how Victor Laval rewrote one of something Red Hook to the Ballad of Black Tom, he took the bones of the story and made it something not as egregiously racist and called out the racism in the original, right? Could you do that with this? You could, but I think it would be an entirely different book, and that would be fine. Like, I would read somebody rewriting this from a different perspective to highlight the racism of the narrator and the main character in this book, and to highlight the basically that person's bigotry, framing all of this as something that maybe it even wasn't, just because of the way that Lovecraft wrote about it. And I think that made it kind of difficult for me to even enjoy the story. So that's how I feel about that. I'm working my way through some of the classics again, like I did a couple years ago, and just picking the shorter ones out that I can grab real quick and listen to for like 10-20 minutes at night before I go to bed. And so that was this one, and not definitely my worst read of the year for this year so far. And then I finished an arc called The Homecoming by Zoë Apostolides. I still haven't looked it up. I'm such a dick. Hold on. Okay, I can't find anything about how to pronounce her last name. Just that she's been a journalist for the last 10 years. And she definitely wrote in a way that felt kind of journalistic, which was appropriate for the story. So I really enjoyed this. This I got as an advanced copy from NetGalley. It did come out on the 7th, so I was a little bit delayed in finishing it. I was behind on physical reading. I have finished one physical book in 2 weeks this month, because I have been busy, and I have been not very motivated to read physically. I feel like doing a lot of things with my hands, and then I'll just listen to an audiobook. So, but that's nothing to say about this book was not the reason that I was not reading, because I was really enjoying it when I was reading it. And I read it very quickly, and I felt it was very consumable. So we're following this journalist, Ellen, who is traveling to this kind of remote-ish location outside of London. I think it's a 6-hour train journey for her. So, and I don't remember which direction it went. But she's from London, and she's like heading out into the country to interview this woman named Catherine Carey, who lives in this old estate in the countryside, and she wants her memoirs written. And Ellen shows up to write them, and she's like a ghostwriter, so she's not really supposed to be kind of advertising that she's a ghostwriter, that she's there to write memoirs. She said she's there to do a project. And she kind of finds Miss Carey in a state that she didn't really expect her to be in. She's kind of maybe thinking she's dealing with some dementia or something along those lines. She gets some weird vibes from people in town, not really wanting to talk about her, but also wanting to talk about her. And things start kind of happening weirdly in the manor that she is staying in. And then we get some big twists and reveals and stuff. And it's pitched as a horror. It's definitely like a literary book with some horror elements in it. and so I would not class this as a horror. I enjoyed it, but it's not horrific enough to be a horror. It has some horror elements, but the twist I think is not predictable, but I thought predictable like from the first page, but I think I figured it out around page like 75 or 100-ish. I was like, oh, I think this is what's happening. And I will say that the payoff of that is not like, it's fine. Like, it's totally fine that you can predict it, because then the way that our character deals with it and all of that stuff is like it's actually pretty well done, and it still kept me interested. I wasn't like, oh my god, I know exactly what is happening, I'm done with the book. It was like, I know what's happening. What's the character going to do with what is happening? How is that going to play out? So I did enjoy it that way, and I think that's because the writing style was very consumable, like I said. Also in the back of this, we have this kind of little background story happening with our main character and this person who's referred to as you throughout the book. I looked at my phone, I had a text from you, and that made me think about this time when we did this together, and you were always so happy, and that type of thing, right? And so it takes a little bit to kind of figure out what's going on there. A mild spoiler is that it starts off that it might be like a love interest, but it's not. It's her best friend who has recently had a child and is kind of pulling back from the friendship. So we're dealing a lot with like different types of grief in this book and different types of longing, as well as kind of different expectations for women in society. And so it paired well with Eve, surprisingly, but different expectations that society puts on women and how that plays out in terms of friendships and isolation. And that part of it I really liked. It is a very literary book. And I think I read 2 books this year now from journalists who are writing like books. I read Youth Juice and I read this one. And I like this a lot better than Youth Juice. Youth Juice was a little more chaotic. I can talk about Youth Juice at some point because I have read some pink books this year. I might talk about all the pink books I've read at some point. But yeah, so this was... overall, I liked it. I did give it like a 4-star, and I'm looking forward to like reading more from this author. I think it's really well done. I wish the eels had a bigger role though. So overall, I recommend it. That is what I read. I am currently reading 3 things currently. I didn't bring it down with me, but I started Muted. It's this graphic novel by Miranda Mundt, I want to say. I have actually read the entire, so I got a sampler at Emerald City Comic Con. I should have grabbed it because I've read up to the end of the sampler, and I am looking forward to finishing it. I'm gonna probably focus on finishing that today because it's only gonna take me like an hour and a half to finish it because it's a graphic novel. It's beautifully illustrated. I love the colors. I like this illustration style a lot. I find it enjoyable and like nice to look at, and I love the colors. So it's set in New Orleans. And so far from what I can tell, we have like a witchy kind of family, and we have this like blood ritual they have to go through at this specific like point in their life, and they have to call up a demon, and our main character purposefully does it wrong so that she doesn't have to join the family because there's some like beef between her and her aunt who's raising her. The aunt really doesn't like her and kind of looks down on her. And it may be because she's like really good at being a witch, but I'm not sure. So that's kind of what's happening there. We have like some other characters introduced. I'm gonna see what's gonna happen. It was pitched to me by the vendor at Emerald City Comic Con as Sapphic Swamp Witches, and I said, yes, please, I will happily take that sampler. So I'm looking forward to finishing it. Again, I have an arc of this on NetGalley. It comes out later this summer. I'll put the date here because I can't remember the exact date right now. I think it comes out August or September. It might be July though. I don't know. The other thing I am reading is I started last night, my like little book for when I go to bed is Alice in Wonderland. Alice's, what's the title? The exact title. Let me give you the title of the book because I can never remember the exact title. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember if it's Through the Looking Glass, but I think that's the next one. So listening to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland narrated by Scarlett Johansson, which is very nice to listen to as I'm going to bed. I'm only like 25% in, and I'm just like thinking of the movie the whole time. Like I don't get pictures in my head, but I'm like, oh, I remember that from the movie. I remember that. That's different. Like, because I watched that movie so many times as a kid. It was one of my favorites. And so I can like kind of like remember the voice differences and stuff. And I'm really enjoying Scarlett Johansson's voice acting. It's very pleasant to listen to. because that's my classic that I'm currently going through at night in my like 10-20 minutes while I wind down. I think this one is only like 2 hours and 20 minutes max, 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm listening to it at 1.5 speed. That feels right for the talking. So I maybe listened to a little, I listened to about 40 minutes or something like that last night. So enjoying it, enjoying the commentary on social expectations. And then yesterday technically, but more so today, I have been listening to Bury Your Gaze. I always say bury weird. It's bury, or is it bury? I don't know. It depends on where you're from, apparently. And at some point in my life, I switched to saying bury. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is my second Chuck Tingle book that I have read. I am loving this one. Chuck Tingle is so good. So this one is basically we're following an author who is a screenwriter. That's the type of author he is. And his current TV series features a lesbian couple, but it's like a will they, won't they. It's not fully on screen. It's just heavily implied. And his final scene is that they are going to have an on-screen kiss. And he has been told by the executives that he needs to not do that. And if he is going to do that, he can either make them straight or he can have them have their emotional reveal and then kill them off. And he's like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm not doing either of those things. I'm going to do the thing that I wanted to do and then you can deal with it. And basically he's kind of being told that, sure, you can do that, but we're just going to take your characters from you if you do. So, legal stuff. What I wasn't expecting, is that, because I knew that basically, what I wasn't expecting is that there's going to be a big conversation about AI and the use of technology in the artistic spaces. So I'm sat for that. We're also having basically our character starts being stalked. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like 27% into this, so I'm really enjoying it. And then I'm going to start Fool's Errand, and I'm terrified, but I'm going to start it. This is the first book in the Tawny Man series. We're back with Fitz, and if I read you the back of this at all, it is a spoiler to Assassin's Apprentice. So I probably will not be able to talk about this book without spoiling Assassin's Apprentice, and that whole Farseer series. So if we'll see what I do. I might make a ton of notes because I have the physical ones for these. I might just make a ton of notes and do a video on all 3 of them if I manage to finish them, because I'm very intimidated. Although I have a feeling since I start this, I will not want to put it down. But this will be the first Robin Hobb that I have read physically, and I'm very much looking forward to it, and also very, very fucking terrified. So, this week on Friday, I had to go dress shopping. I'm going to Ireland soon for a friend's wedding, and so I needed a dress. So I went dress shopping, and then the first place I stopped was the thrift store to see if I could find something. I could not find anything, but I found Who to F for You by Huda Fahmy. I heard about this from Reads with Rachel, and I have had my eye out for it, and I found a copy for $2, and it's basically brand new. So I'm going to be reading this soon. It will be pretty straightforward. It is a graphic novel. It's supposed to be really funny, and I'm excited. And then I decided to treat myself after I did find my dress as a little reward. Went to my local bookstore, who's just recently opened within the last couple of months. They opened on Independent Bookstore Day. So I went and bought something from them. I bought Full Metal Alchemist. Do I need to start another manga series? No. But am I going to? Yeah, I'm very excited. So I watched this. I have not watched Brotherhood. I have watched the original Full Metal Alchemist. I know I need to watch Brotherhood. Feel free to yell at me in the comments. I know I need to watch Brotherhood. But I'm going to maybe read this, and then maybe I'll watch Brotherhood, because my boyfriend was like, how could you have not watched Brotherhood? Because he's an anime guy. So he was like, how have you not watched Brotherhood? And I was like, listen. I watched Full Metal Alchemist. I don't remember much from it, but I remember being emotionally distraught. And then everyone was like, watch Brotherhood. So I started watching it. I was like, I'm still too emotionally distraught. So I did not watch Brotherhood. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I have not done any of my crochet projects since I talked to you last. So I'm going to try and do some of that this week. We have like 3 weeks until we leave 2.5 weeks or something like that till we leave for Ireland. So need to get some suitcases, need to make my packing lists, and that's kind of be consuming me. My like little travel anxiety is starting to kick in. So we'll see how much I get read. And at some point soon, we'll figure out what I'm going to bring with me. Probably just going to bring my Kindle, but we'll figure out a little Kindle reading goal and all of that stuff. So thank you for sitting around with me till the end. If you did, give me a like if you liked this. I appreciate it. And I will see you later this week with something else.